Previously, Sean's faith, or at least her religious knowledge, was tested by the Illuminator. Thanks to her own past knowledge and a little mind reading from Tornak, as well as some insightful character reading on her part, she was able to answer all of the questions that were asked of her. The Illuminator admitted that while most of the noble families had turned from Aurelian in her mind, the Valenta family still seemed to be faithful. She was willing to accept the donation that Sean was there to give, but first she had a task that she wanted completed. A member of the Rain family had been in the area and fled to the swamps when the news broke about the beginning of war, and she wanted Sean to track him down and kill him. Considering he was the first cousin of Sean's sister-in-law, that complicated things. Still, Sean merely agreed for the time being. The rest of the group spent a little more time at the Breaker Bar getting information about exactly where the sigils were located before heading back to the Wyvern's Claw. Taria and Keelan picked up some food on the way back, and then Taria tried to sell some platinum she'd previously found, before quickly coming to the conclusion that wasn't happening while the group was in that particular town. Zaya, on the other hand, had a talk with Yara and Enola to try to convince them that it would be in their best interest if the group fought the Shadow Spawn to gain power from it. After the service ended, the group from the temple headed back to the Wyvern's Claw to meet up with the others. Oz and Tornak thought that everything had gone well. Sean had a different opinion on the matter. She filled the others in on the request that had been made of her, as well as her relationship to the man that the Illuminator wanted her to kill. She'd never heard anything bad about him, so she suspected it was just a wrong place, wrong time situation. Sean didn't particularly want to kill him unless he gave them an actual reason to do so. Tornak suggested just throwing the gold at the temple's door and leaving it there. Sean wasn't thrilled by that idea, but she agreed it was an option. She still wanted to try to find him, though, if only because she owed that to her sister-in-law and Nibbling, since he was related by blood to them. They talked some more, going back and forth about what to do. Where they'd been told to find Dagon Rain was in the opposite direction of where the Shadow Spawn was, so they didn't think they'd have time to do both that night. Eventually, Keelan and Zaya went to check with the Breakers to see if they could postpone dealing with the Shadow Spawn for a day. The Breakers didn't like that plan, as everyone knew there was an army heading their way, and they pointed out that they could head out immediately and have the Shadow Spawn dealt with within an hour or two, especially since the group has decided to seal it rather than fight it. It was pointed out, though, that if the sealing failed, then they would have to fight it after all. With that argument, they decided to deal with sealing the Shadow Spawn then, and depending on how things went, they'd deal with Dagon Rain later that night if they thought they were up to it afterwards. Keelan asked Zaya about the noticeable tension with Oz on the way back to pick up the others, and she eventually snapped at him that Oz had died and never told her about it, and then when she'd asked him about it, he'd kept lying, so that's why she was so pissed. He knew better than to lie to her. As they made their way to where the sigil was, the Breaker in the group made several comments, making it clear that he was hoping the ritual would fail so that they'd have to fight the Shadow Spawn. It didn't seem like he was intentionally planning on doing anything to make the ritual go wrong, though. On the other hand, Sean picked up on the fact that Zaya clearly did have plans for sabotaging the ritual. When they got close to the side of the sigils, Sean pulled Keelan aside to give him a heads up that she suspected Zaya was going to try to pull some shady bullshit. Considering the entire conversation about lying he'd had with Zaya a few hours earlier, Keelan wasn't particularly thrilled to hear that. They prepared to start the ritual, with Oz, Taria, and Tornak stepping up. Zaya tried to join as well, but Sean grabbed her arm and made it very clear that wasn't happening. When Zaya tried to protest, Sean told her that she knew she was up to something, and the group wasn't going to fight a nightmare-class Shadow Spawn no matter how much she might want to do so. Zaya gave in and let Sean take her place in the ritual, but it was obvious she was still planning something. The ritual had its ups and downs, and Zaya attempted to subtly sabotage it magically, although Keelan could tell she was up to something and made his way over to prevent her from doing it again. In the end, the ritual succeeded. As the Shadow Spawn was bound, the group felt a bit stronger, although it wasn't quite as overwhelmingly strong as the aftermath of some of their previous fights. One might say that it almost felt as if one of their abilities went up slightly. And that is where we left off.